Every morning, a quiet, poor girl named Nibra walked to school with a carton over her head. It was the only way she could hide her face. Years ago, a terrible accident had left deep scars on her skin, and ever since then, she felt like a monster in her own village. The kids at school never let her forget it. They laughed at her, pointed fingers, and called her names. The worst was Ghost Girl. They said she looked like something out of a nightmare. Nibra never said a word. She just kept walking, holding her books close, head down, carton on. The carton became her shield. Her safe place. Her hiding spot from the world that didn't want to see her. She never took it off, not in class, not even during lunch. Most teachers ignored her, or treated her like she wasn't there. But still, she came to school. Every single day. Even when it rained and the carton got soggy. Even when she was hungry and tired. She just wanted to learn. Maybe one day, she could leave the village. Maybe one day, she wouldn't need the carton anymore. But for now, she lived in silence. A ghost to everyone around her. The village kids continued to mock her. And her heart slowly learned to stay quiet too, just like her voice. They saw the carton, but they never saw the girl underneath. Not yet. But everything was about to change. At home, things were even worse for Nibra. The one person who was supposed to care for her, her stepmother, Chidima, made her life a living nightmare. Chidima never showed Nibra any love. Instead, she treated her like a shameful secret. "Don't show your face," she would whisper with a cold voice. "You are cursed. If people look at you too long, something bad will happen to them." At first, Nibra didn't believe her. But when everyone at school started saying the same things, laughing and calling her a bad luck charm, she began to wonder if it was true. Chidima would tell the neighbors that Nibra brought darkness into the house. She said Nibra was the reason her own children were sick or failed their exams. "It's the girl," she'd say. "The one with the cursed face." Soon, people in the village started avoiding Nibra like a plague. Even the small children were told not to touch her. Mothers pulled their kids away if Nibra walked too close. No one wanted to sit near her, speak to her, or even look at her. And all of this started with Chidima. She whispered lies into people's ears like poison. "She should stay hidden," she'd say. "It's better for all of us." She even forced Nibra to wear the carton every time she stepped outside the house. "You will never be beautiful," she hissed one day. "So stop trying." That sentence echoed in Nibra's heart for weeks. Nibra began to believe there was something truly wrong with her. She started to avoid mirrors. She ate alone. She sat in the back of the classroom. She walked with her head down, dragging her feet, hoping the ground would just open up and swallow her. All the while, Chidima smiled, proud that she had pushed Nibra into silence. Even when teachers visited the house, Chidima acted sweet in front of them and told them lies. "She's shy, that's all," she'd say, pretending to pat Nibra gently. "She's different. She knows she's not like the other children." And everyone believed her because Nibra never spoke up. She was too scared. Too broken. Too tired. No one knew that every night, Nibra cried herself to sleep. She dreamed of being free, of being seen, just once, without fear. But every morning, the same thing happened. She woke up, put on her school uniform, picked up her books, and gently lowered the carton over her head. It was like putting on her sadness, her shame, her armor. Then she walked out the door, past Chidima's sharp eyes, past the whispers in the streets, and straight into another day of pain. Still, deep inside, a tiny spark lived in Nibra's heart, a quiet voice that whispered, "Maybe one day, someone will see me." But that voice was faint, and fading fast. Because when the people closest to you tell you that you're worthless, it's hard to believe anything else. Nibra didn't know it yet, but her story wasn't over. Something was coming that would change everything. Someone was coming. One bright Monday morning, something different happened at Nibira's school. A new teacher arrived, a young woman named Miss Awil. She was not like the others. She wore colorful dresses, smiled at everyone, and spoke in a soft, kind voice. The students were curious about her, but no one was more curious than Miss Awil herself, especially about the quiet girl in the last row, the one who always wore a carton on her head. From her first day, Miss Awil noticed how the other teachers avoided Nibira. She saw how students laughed behind her back and called her "Ghost Girl." Most people just ignored her completely, as if she didn't exist. But Miss Awil didn't ignore her. She watched carefully, and her heart grew heavy with each passing day. One afternoon, during class, a group of boys whispered and pointed at Nibira. One boy made ghost sounds. The class laughed. That was when Miss Awil slammed her book shut and stood up. Her voice was calm but firm. "Enough," she said. "This is not how we treat each other." The room went silent. Everyone stared. She turned to Nibira and said, "Come forward." Nibira froze. Her hands began to shake. She had never been asked to stand in front of the class before. Slowly, with heavy steps, she walked to the front. All eyes were on her. Some were curious. Some were cruel. Her heart was beating like a drum inside her chest. Miss Awil looked gently into her eyes. "My dear," she said, "I want you to take off the carton. You don't have to hide. Not here. Not with me." Gasps filled the room. No teacher had ever dared say such a thing. Chidima, Nibira's stepmother, who had come to the school to check on things, stood at the back with her arms crossed and an evil smile. She was waiting for Nibira to be laughed at again, waiting for her to run out crying. Nibira felt like the ground would swallow her. Her fingers touched the edge of the carton. Her breath was shaky. But then, something in Miss Awil's voice gave her courage. No one had spoken to her like that before. No one had said, "You don't have to hide." Slowly, slowly, she lifted the carton from her head. The room went completely silent. No one moved. No one laughed. Because what they saw was not what they expected. Yes, Nibira had a few scars, but her face was soft and beautiful. Her skin glowed under the sunlight coming through the window. And her eyes, they were the most striking thing of all. Large, clear, and full of silent strength. There was no ghost in front of them. Only a girl. A girl who had been hiding for far too long. Miss Awil smiled with tears in her eyes. "You are beautiful," she whispered. And at that moment, for the first time in her life, Nibira believed it might be true. When Nibira finally removed the carton from her head, the entire school seemed to stop breathing. A deep silence filled the room, as if time itself had frozen. Every student, every teacher, every eye in the assembly hall was locked on her. They had all expected to see something scary, something ugly, something to laugh at, the cursed face they had been told about for years. But what they saw instead left them shocked, speechless, and still. Nibira stood there, her head slightly bowed, holding the carton in her trembling hands. Her face had a few soft scars, like little memories of pain, but they didn't take away from her beauty, they made it more powerful. Her skin glowed like sun-kissed bronze, smooth and calm like a quiet river. Her lips were soft, her nose small, her features delicate. But it was her eyes that made everyone freeze. Big, deep, and bright, her eyes were like fire and water at the same time. They held pain, yes, but also strength. They were fierce and full of life, like they had seen the worst and still chose to keep going. No one could look away. Those eyes weren't cursed. They were unforgettable. Whispers started to move through the crowd, but this time they weren't mean. They were soft and full of surprise. Some mouths were open. Some hands were covering them. The same kids who used to call her Ghost Girl were now staring with wide eyes and guilty hearts. Even the teachers, who once ignored her, looked ashamed. Miss Aweel stood beside her, proud and smiling. "This," she said gently, "is what you all were too blind to see. Not a ghost. Not a curse. But a girl. A beautiful, brave girl." Nibra didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence spoke louder than words. She looked around at the faces that once mocked her, and for the first time, she didn't feel small. She didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel like a secret. Chidima, standing at the back, had no words. Her fake smile had dropped. Her face was pale. She had spent years telling lies about Nibra, calling her cursed, hiding her away like trash. Now, the truth stood in the middle of the school hall, shining like the sun. A boy in the front row whispered, "She's beautiful," and others slowly nodded. Something was changing in that room, and everyone could feel it. The carton, once a symbol of shame, now hung in Nibra's hand like something she no longer needed. It was just a piece of cardboard. It had no power over her anymore. And in that moment, Nibra did something she hadn't done in years. She smiled. It was small, but strong. And the whole school watched in silence, not because they were scared, but because they were finally seeing her, not the box, not the stories, not the scars, just her. And she was more than anyone had ever imagined. That same day, just after the school assembly ended and the crowd slowly started to break apart, a man stood quietly near the school gate. He was a local photographer named Uncle Femi. He had come to the school for something else, but when he saw the crowd gathering and heard whispers of "the girl with the carton," he grew curious. As Nibra stood at the front of the school, still holding the carton in one hand, still glowing with quiet strength, Uncle Femi lifted his camera. He didn't want to disturb her, so he stayed back and took the photo silently, just one click. Nibra didn't even know it happened. The photo captured everything: her gentle scars, her shining skin, her soft lips, and most of all, those powerful eyes looking into the distance. It wasn't just a picture. It was a story. A feeling. A truth the world had never seen before. Later that night, Uncle Femi posted the photo on his photography blog and added a simple title, "Africa's Hidden Jewel." He didn't give her name. He didn't tell her story. He simply wrote, "Sometimes, beauty hides in the shadows until the light finds it." The photo spread like fire. Within hours, people in Lagos were sharing it. Artists were reposting it. Fashion pages picked it up. "Who is this girl?" they asked. "Where has she been hiding?" Some thought it was a model campaign. Others believed it was a painting. But it was real, raw, natural, and untouched. Just one image, and people were in love. The photo found its way to Instagram, Twitter, and even the front page of a popular Lagos magazine. They wrote, "A new face has arrived. Africa's hidden jewel, the girl with the fire in her eyes." Nibra, however, had no idea what was happening. She didn't even know what "viral" meant. She was just starting to feel a little freer, walking to school without the carton, sitting beside Miss Aweel during break time, learning to lift her head a little higher. But far away in the big city, her face was causing a storm. Modeling agencies began searching. Emails flew. Phone calls were made. Who was this girl? Where was she from? Back in the village, things started to shift. People who once mocked her began whispering a different tone. The same children who laughed at her now looked away in shame. Even some mothers who used to pull their kids from her path now nodded kindly when she passed. But Nibra didn't let it change her heart. She stayed quiet, gentle, and humble. Miss Aweel was the first to tell her. She sat her down and showed her the photo on her phone. Nibra stared at it, shocked. "That's me," she whispered. Her eyes filled with tears. For so long, she had believed she was ugly, cursed, and forgotten. But the world was now seeing what Miss Awil had always seen. And in that moment, Nibra didn't feel small anymore. She didn't feel hidden. The world had seen her, not just her face, but her truth. And they loved it. Just a few days after Nibra's photo went viral, her quiet little village changed. Big black cars rolled into town, something the villagers had never seen before. People rushed out of their homes, staring as a group of well-dressed strangers stepped out. They wore sunglasses, carried expensive bags, and looked like they had come from another world. But they weren't there for anyone else, they were there for Nibra. The strangers were from a global modeling agency in Paris. They had searched everywhere for the girl in the photo. And now, they had found her. They walked straight to her small home, holding a shiny folder with her name on it. Inside was a contract, offering money, travel, education, and a full career as an international model. They told her, "Your face is magic. The world is waiting." But Nibra didn't say yes. She was scared. It all felt too fast, too big. Her heart was still healing. She wasn't sure she was ready to leave everything behind. She had just started to feel seen. She had just started to smile again. She held the contract in her hands and whispered, "I don't know." Her stepmother, Chidima, was standing nearby, pretending to be shocked. But deep inside, she saw one thing only, money. That night, while Nibra slept, Chidima went through the folder again. She didn't care about the girl. She only saw the dollar signs. The next morning, she took the contract and went to meet the agency herself. She told them, "I'm her guardian. I give permission. You can use her face for anything. Just pay me." But the agency knew something wasn't right. They had done their research. Nibra wasn't her real child. She wasn't her legal guardian. They refused. Chidima shouted, cried, begged, but they walked away. When Nibra heard what happened, she was heartbroken. Her stepmother had tried to sell her, like she was an object, like she was still wearing that carton. The same woman who made her feel like a curse was now trying to profit from her beauty. Miss Awil held her close and said, "You don't have to let anyone own your story. But if you choose to go, let it be your choice. Not theirs." That night, Nibra sat under the stars, thinking. She looked at the carton lying in the corner of her room, the same one that used to hide her. And then she looked in the mirror. Her scars were still there, but now she saw them differently. She saw strength. She saw survival. The next morning, she walked to the agency's car with quiet confidence. She looked the team in the eye and said, "I'll sign. But this time, I choose." Cheers broke out. Papers were signed. Her journey was about to begin. And as the car drove away from the village, Nibra didn't feel like she was running. She felt like she was rising. This time, not to hide, but to shine. 1 year later, the sky above Nibra's village roared like thunder. Everyone ran outside, shielding their eyes from the wind. A helicopter, big and shiny, was slowly landing in the middle of the school field. No one had ever seen anything like it. The children screamed with excitement. The teachers stared in shock. And then, as the blades slowed and the dust settled, a tall, elegant young woman stepped out. It was Nibra. But this was not the same girl who once walked with her head down and a carton on her head. This Nibra wore a glowing smile, stylish clothes, and confidence like sunshine. Her photo was now on billboards across Africa and beyond. Her face had been on fashion magazines, beauty ads, and global TV. The world knew her name. She was the face of a major global campaign called Rise from Shadows. The school gathered quickly. Cameras clicked. Some cried. Miss Awil was the first to hug her, tears rolling down her cheeks. "You kept your promise," she whispered. Nibra laughed softly. I came back. Then, she walked into the school building and entered the main hall. There, inside a glass box, sat the old carton she used to wear. Cleaned, preserved, and placed with care. Under it, a small sign read. The girl who hid, until the world could finally see her. The room fell silent. Everyone stared. Nibra smiled, touched the glass gently, and said, I didn't change. I just stopped hiding. And in that moment, every girl who ever felt unseen, every child who ever felt small, believed they could rise too.